Sometimes a person has the feeling that they have been walking through life slightly hunched over, as if carrying an invisible weight on their shoulders. This weight is unnoticed by others. They may see someone who appears quite successful, socially well-adjusted, someone who works, communicates, can joke, help others. They may be someone who always supports their friends, who tries to do everything right, who rarely allows themselves to show weakness. But inside, there is an almost constant sense of tension, as if somewhere deep down, there lives a quiet fear of not being good enough, not measuring up, not being liked. This tension may not be consciously recognized. It becomes a background that the person gets used to, like getting used to the hum of a city vent outside the window. It is there, but one doesn't think about it. And only when someone slightly raises their voice, gives a displeased look, or simply reacts without enough warmth, a familiar wave rises inside. Awkwardness, a tightness in the chest, an inner collapse. A person may not even have time to think, but they feel, I did something wrong. This feeling appears almost automatically, because it has long been built into the very way they experience the world. If you try to trace where this came from, almost always the roots go back to early childhood, to the age when the child could not yet explain in words what they felt, and was entirely dependent on how adults responded to them. And if the people nearby loved, but loved in the only way they knew how, through control, demands, comparison with others, constant pushing toward better, the child formed the idea, in order to be accepted, I must try. This was not a malicious intention. It was simply a way of expressing love that the adults themselves once learned. But for the child, it turned into a model. I can only be loved for results. Then that very inner critic appeared. He's not evil. He's not an enemy. He's a guard. He watches to ensure the person does not relax, does not show weakness, does not make mistakes. His task is to protect from possible shame or rejection. His logic is simple. If you are good enough, the world will not hurt you. And that is why he does not leave even when the person grows up. He continues to notice every shortcoming, every small thing, every possible wrong. And a person lives as if they are always being watched, even when no one is around. Over time, this becomes so familiar that it seems like part of the personality. The person thinks, that's just how I am. But in reality, it is a set of reactions once learned. And inside, behind this tension, there is something very soft, quiet, vulnerable. The very child who once simply wanted to be, not to earn, not to prove, not to justify, but simply to be. They never disappeared. They were just waiting for the moment when they would finally be noticed, when someone would approach them, not with evaluation or demands, but with presence. They were waiting for an adult who could say, you have the right to be yourself. You don't need to measure up. And the path to confidence begins exactly with this, with an inward turn toward oneself. Not sharp, not dramatic, not through now I'll force myself to think differently, but through very simple, slow, gentle steps. Through the ability to notice your own state, through pauses between I must and what am I really feeling right now, through giving yourself permission to be imperfect. Self-esteem is not restored through promises like I will be stronger, I can do it, I will stop being afraid. Such phrases often only increase internal pressure. True restoration begins where a different tone appears. I can stay with myself even when I'm scared. I don't have to be liked by everyone. I don't need to be perfect to deserve warmth. This is not motivation. This is the return of access to oneself. And this process happens gradually, sometimes slowly, sometimes with setbacks, sometimes with fatigue, But every time a person notices that they did something out of care for themselves, even if it is a very small step, inside it becomes a tiny bit warmer. They notice that support can come from within, not outside, not loud, not perfect, but living, human. And so, day after day, slowly, almost invisibly, a new sense begins to form inside. I can be as I am, not because they became better, but because they allowed themselves to be a person. And at this point, true confidence begins. Quiet, deep, warm. When a person begins to turn toward themselves even a little with attention rather than demand, something very fragile begins to grow inside. It resembles a thin sprout breaking through dense soil. At first, it is almost invisible. It even seems as if nothing is changing. There are still doubts, and habitual reactions still step forward faster than awareness. But over time, it becomes noticeable that inside there is a little more space. A tiny pause before scolding oneself for a mistake, before automatically agreeing to something uncomfortable, before once again trying to prove something to the world. This pause is very important. It is like a breath before movement. In it, a person gets the chance to ask themselves not what is required, but what is right for me now. Such a question may sound unfamiliar at first, even strange. After all, for many years the person focused on what is correct, what others expect, how to look better. Now attention begins to turn inward, and this takes time. At first, this inner softness may even be frightening. It seems that if you stop controlling yourself, everything will fall apart. That if you reduce the pressure on yourself a little, laziness, weakness, inactivity will appear. But this is the same old fear. If I don't force myself to be perfect, I won't be accepted. It is important to understand that inner support is not relaxed permissiveness. It is not I can do anything. It is more like, I am allowed to be human. This is a huge difference. Over time, a person notices that, when they treat themselves with warmth rather than criticism, it becomes easier to move forward. Not because someone demands it, but because they begin to feel an inner impulse, a small desire, a small aspiration, a desire to care for oneself from within, rather than performing duties imposed from outside. Here we can recall that confidence is not the absence of fear. Confidence is the ability to walk alongside fear without abandoning oneself. This state sounds like, I can make a mistake, and I will still stay with myself. I may not be liked by someone, and yet my value remains. This feeling becomes the foundation on which a person can rely. Gradually, the tone of the internal dialogue begins to change. If earlier the voice sounded harsh, demanding, you did not do enough again. Why are you like this? You need to be better, faster, clearer. Now it becomes softer. I see that it's difficult for you right now. You're trying. You are alive. Let's slow down a little. And this slowing down is also a key moment. People with low self-esteem usually live in high internal speed because fear of mistakes does not allow them to stop. And slowing down is a way to break out of automatic reactions, to return to the body, to feel the support of the floor, the breath, their own presence. Breathing plays an important role. When a person is constantly evaluating themselves, the body tenses, shoulders rise, the chest tightens, breathing becomes shallow. The body seems to always expect danger, and when a person gradually learns to relax the shoulders, release the jaw, take deeper breaths, this is not just physiology, it is a symbol of permission to exist. The body knows old stories. The body remembers how things once were, and through working with the body, we return a part of lost safety. And here is what is remarkable. The more a person learns to be on their own side, the quieter the outside world becomes, not because people change, but because the internal filters change. Where once any word could be a blow, Now it becomes just a word. Where once something had to be proven, now one can simply be present. Where once there was tension, now there is room for choice. A person begins to notice that they do not have to be liked by everyone, that they can be imperfect, that they can be alive, that they can have boundaries, that they have the right to say no, not because they must, but because they feel. And then self-esteem stops being about evaluation. It becomes about relationship, a relationship with oneself. Quiet, human, accepting, and this relationship is something that can stay with a person for a long time. Like an inner friend, like support, like a home in which it is not frightening to be yourself.